Let's take a look at some information and charts on Yearn Wi-Fi for Brave New Coin. So Yearn at its core is three things. It's a vault, it's a earn or yield optimizer, funds shifted between DYDX Aave compound automatically as the interest rates change. And then governance, which I think is mostly malarkey for all these DeFi coins, but it gives them an additional use case beyond just buy and hold speculation type of stuff. Love the vaults, hate the governance on anything. It just doesn't, doesn't do it for me. Maybe it'll matter down the line. We shall see. Here's just an example of the interest rates over time, how they've changed on various platforms. Compound Aave DYDX. Currently they're at multi-month lows. Typically as speculation picks up, these yields pick up, at least ideally. The same with DAI, the same with ETH and BTC on occasion. Some other stuff as well mixed in there. The site itself, Yearn.finance, the vaults, super clean. Again, the interoperability is perfect between everything on ETH. Just plug in MetaMask or hardware wallet or whatever you want, and off you go. You can just deposit into the vaults here. You can sort by APY if you want. You can get connected to all sorts of stuff. Yearn vaults, Curve vaults, SNX vaults, DAI, Tether, stablecoins, the best of the best when it comes to not being exposed to underlying volatility, but being exposed to interest rates, basically. Currently at 6%, which is better than you'll get in legacy markets, better than you'll get on most staking crypto stuff. And that's just for the lowest risk. USDC is probably the lowest risk stablecoin amongst all of them. Then comes DAI, then comes Tether, and the rest of them. And the total TVL is back above 4 billion. Most of that's on version 2 or V2, and then a little bit on some other avenues. But again, I love the vault aspect. I don't know what this is going to do for the token. If anything, let's say TVL triples, quadruples. Will it matter for the token? I guess maybe people buy the token with an expectation that it'll matter, but I don't necessarily know. Especially when the token's valued at 30,000 or whatever it is now. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but yield optimization is great. As far as TVL is concerned, amongst the group on Ethereum, Yearn is now in the top 10 if you want to include WBTC, wrapped ETH, that sort of thing. But it's definitely near the top. A healthy leader. I mean, it's above Sushi, at least on ETH. So it's not going anywhere anytime soon. If we look at the token on-chain analytics specifically from Coinmetrics, transaction counts all-time low. Average transaction value is creeping up a little bit as transaction counts fall. That's natural. But this just doesn't look bullish to me. You can have two minds here. You can say this looks bearish, transaction counts are at all-time low, or you can say I'm super bullish because price is still at 30,000, transaction counts are at all-time lows. If transaction counts pick up at all, price is going to skyrocket because there's just going to be tons of speculation going on with the token. Something else to look at here for Wi-Fi specifically is who owns what amount of token, where is it sitting? Is Binance voting with other people's Wi-Fi? Who has custody of this stuff, that sort of thing. Active addresses also, much like transaction counts, basically at all-time lows. Not a lot of people moving this thing around on-chain. NVT declining, which is actually bullish for Wi-Fi. It says that there's more on-chain activity relative to market cap than there has been over the past few weeks. MVRV, which I've been looking at for all these DeFi coins, no real signal here. In general, a 2x multiple has been the top historically for most of crypto. MVRV is a measure of market cap over on-chain activity. And so when market cap gets 2 times greater than on-chain activity, typically that has been the top for most coins. In Wi-Fi's case, not much of a signal here. Looks like it's topped out around 1.2, but there just isn't enough data to really get a signal here, I don't think. You can see the lows have been when MVRV dips below 1, dips below 0.8. That has been a buy. So it's definitely not in the buy zone. It's closer to the overbought zone than anything, if this thing is even a signal at all. Recently, they did get added to comp, which I think is huge. As far as staying power in the ecosystem, the more this stuff is connected to each other in some way. Maker got added as well, even though you can view Maker as a competitor to comp. The more this stuff gets added, Aave here as well, the more stuff gets added to one another, the better for everything. I think you could say, well, There's a risk here of everything collapsing together. That's fair, but it also sort of emboldens the use cases, gives you more avenues to lend and borrow. I think it's smart, personally. So Wi-Fi down here at the bottom, one of the smallest markets, just added August 4th. Flipping gears to technicals, we have monthly pivots, 5,200 cross on the daily, VPVR, volume, and RSI. So much like all of crypto, it had this triple bottom, inverted head and shoulders with that diagonal neckline, broke up from that. Like everything else, Wi-Fi is not exactly acting on its own here, which is fine. And if you're bullish everything else, you should be bullish Wi-Fi. If you're bearish everything else, when everything's correlated, you should be bearish Wi-Fi. So it's not smart to be bearish here, in my opinion. If everything else looks fine and ready for higher highs, you're going to get a golden cross here. Eventually, Wi-Fi's first golden cross since trading began on the daily. It's above volume resistance at 32K, currently at 38K, and the 50% retracement is 55K. So this thing could have substantial legs yet to go, and the cloud agrees with that with a flat Kumo at 60.5K. I don't know if I want to live in a world where Wi-Fi is worth what it's worth, considering I think it's a meaningless token, as does Andre, the dev behind Yearn. But hey, the tech is the tech, and this thing is a picture-perfect edge-to-edge entry here. Bullish DK cross, price closing in the cloud, and massive upside potential. So this thing could go to 60.5. Would I bet money on it? Sure. Would I bet a lot of money on it? No. This isn't... fundamentals tell you what to buy, technicals tell you when to buy. And for me, the fundamentals just aren't there to want to buy this thing. But the tech says, yeah, it's good to go. Wi-Fi BTC, bit of a W double bottom, potential bull cross in the making, really needs to get above 1. That's kind of the psychological level, I guess. Parity with BTC. I think just in general, people would rather own BTC than Wi-Fi. Maybe that's wishful thinking, I don't know. Some resistance between 1 and 1.5 on the way up. But this thing could easily flip bullish over the next few weeks. Wi-Fi ETH has never been above the 12-hour cloud. It's never been above the 12-hour 200 for a long period of time. Tons of resistance at 20, basically. I guess you could say support at 10 at all-time lows, but this thing isn't anything I'd want to touch. I want to see mega all-time lows, multi-week bull div, just not there for me. I'd let this thing just keep bleeding forever and scoop up somebody else's mess when they capitulate at the bottom, because this has no bull div just yet. This thing could just keep just slowly grinding, much like Zcash, just grinding to zero over time relative to ETH. And on the daily chart, never been above the cloud. So that's something to watch, right? You can just set alerts for that. Is it above the daily cloud? Is it above the 12-hour 200 period moving average? Is it above the 12-hour cloud, right? The answer to all those things is no. If we slap on a pitchfork to this, you could arguably say it's at the bottom of a range, and it should bounce to the midline between 15 and 17. But is that something I'm willing to bet money on? No. Like, there's just stronger things to buy than this chart. This pair specifically. You can be bullish Wi-Fi and you can be bullish ETH, but I still think ETH outperforms Wi-Fi unless this thing actually moves through that edge-to-edge trade. So Yearn, much like all of DeFi, I love the use case of vault optimization, yield farming optimization. Speaking of yield farming, on Google Trends, it's declining. There is a baseline here for yield farming because it's obviously a non-crypto term as well. So some subtle waning here in interest as far as yield farming searches are concerned. But love the fundamental part of that. The token, I do not understand at all. Tech still looks pretty strong for BTC, extremely weak for ETH. So this thing, could go to 60.5, right? I'll leave it there, I guess. Lastly, I'll just mention the ETH-BTC Fund and DeFi portfolio I trade for Techemy Capital on Enzyme.finance non-custodial portfolio management tool, where you can send ETH to USDC or just watch what I'm doing. You can see AUM allocation, performance. You can see all the tokens here. You can see all the trades I make in the tab below. You can see that I'm in a bunch of Yearn vaults here. So not only do I like the product, but I'm using the product. And you'll also notice the token is not in the group here of the DeFi portfolio. So I am practicing as I preach here. Vault's good, token bad. That's all for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.